Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. During a time of great change in the TV industry, it always remains exciting when a new channel makes it to air. As audiences swap the traditional for streaming, many linear services are being wound down for good. So in a way, it was surprising. When Rewind TV burst onto the airwaves in late May of 2024, the channel focuses on showcasing programming from the good old days, from as early as the 60s up until the 1990s. There's always a demand for these classics to be seen by audiences both old and new, so launching a channel full of that programming? Sure, makes sense. There are a few oddities. For one, it's only available on Sky services, Sky traditional services at that, such as Sky Q. It's currently not available on streaming dominant options like Sky Glass or Sky Stream, which seems an odd choice for launching in 2024. However, they have said that in the near future that they aim to rectify this. But alongside the selection of classic programs, with any new TV channel, there comes new idents to represent them. Given the remit of Rewind TV, it already conjures up many potential gems of ideas that could be utilised. Let's see how they pull this off, with the first of Rewind TV's launch idents, Jungle. Okay, interesting start. This certainly is a jungle setting for sure, and to go on the positives first, I really enjoy the colour palette that's on display here. The lush greens of the jungle and the TV screen in the centre blend well with one another, and the foreboding mists of the jungle add a slightly eerie tone, like something may just jump out from the greenery, though nothing ever does. The soundscape is largely made up by the sounds of nature, very fitting for a jungle, before a few beats of music kick in towards the end, which also sounds quite eerie when paired with the visuals. You'll notice our main central focus point in this, and indeed the entire set, is a deliciously old television, with the Rewind TV logo displayed on screen. The logo itself I quite like. It doubles as not only the Rewind symbol, but also as a pair of moving eyes that are curious and inquisitive, and again, slightly unnerving depending on the scenario. And for a channel focusing all on old programming, the look and feel of the logo itself feels decidedly modern in its approach. Suppose we have to have at least one toe in the present day. Overall though, there is something about this sequence that feels hollow. That may be quite an extreme criticism to come out with, but I can't quite put my finger on it. The visuals are decent and the setup is alright, but something about this feels a little empty. We'll see if that feeling lingers or passes in our next ident today, Lounge. I'm noticing a pattern here. We can gather that the way these idents play out will be the same with each one, that the camera starts zoomed in towards the telly in the middle, before retracting to show us more of the surroundings. As the title suggests, we are indeed in the luscious lounge setting. We swap out the greens of the jungle for a palette of red hues, all which blend lovely together and paint a really serene and laid-back feeling to the setting. The old telly is another welcome sight, a different model this time, and I don't know what it is, but seeing this picture makes me think of Stranger Things and other programs of the like. The soundscape once again is rather sparse, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, it does add to the atmosphere it's going for. Less is sometimes more, after all. One odd thing I've noticed though is the eyes of the Rewind logo. It seems that in every sequence they'll take a moment to look around. As to what they're looking at, we never find out. They may not even be looking at anything. And this is just my view, but I'd rather something else appear on screen to substantiate the look of the logo, rather than a pair of eyes just wandering aimlessly. I'd say on the whole though, I do prefer Lounge to Jungle, but it isn't by much. And yet that oddly hollow feeling is still somewhat present here. I'll explain more as we go. Onwards to our next ident today, C. The gimmick is wearing off now. Don't get me wrong, a level of consistency and uniformity amongst ident sets isn't inherently a bad thing. It begins to grate though when the pattern is so similar that anything majorly new just feels like it's lacking entirely. This ident places us within the depths of the sea, a landscape which often is quite beautiful. This one looks nice, but they couldn't have added swaths more colour to the sequence? Beneath the Sea holds wondrous sights all in bright colours and shades, and even though there are smatterings of it here, it honestly just feels like a missed opportunity. I do like the soundscape of this one. Similar to the jungle, the nature-based sounds of the sea are often very calming and easy to listen to. The few musical beats that go along with it reflect this mood too. Once more, the eyes of the Rewind logo are slowly looking around before the main logo card slides into view, and the more I see this motif, the more it bugs me, because it genuinely feels like we have no payoff. In all of these sequences so far, we're treated to a decent looking visual, for sure, but what else is there beyond that? What else can we take from these idents? The answer at the moment is, not a whole lot. I'm starting to zone in on what potentially may be the issue, but I'm going to save it for a little bit later on. We'll move now to our penultimate launch ident today, which is snow. A glimmer of variety, but just a glimmer. We now see the familiar sight of an old television placed high on the mountains, amidst layers of lovely white snow. We can hear the crunching of footsteps, presumably moving towards or past the TV, which is watching intently, though as you may have guessed, we never see what it sees. After some time, we see a snowball crash into the TV, the eyes of the Rewind logo actually reacting and looking startled. This is the glimmer of variety I talked about. It's nice to see something different happen than just a gradual zoom out. Aside from that though, it is business as usual. I must admit too, when the snowball hits the TV, it doesn't look the most realistic, which made me think that this sequence was made using CGI exclusively compared to the others. It then made me think of a truly baffling concept that could affect all of the sequences that we've seen today. You might know what I'm nudging at, but let's take a look at our final ident today before we round it all up. And that ident is West. Okay, at this point now, it's just a little boring. The new vista this time is that of the American West. A classic to say the least, so it's very on brand with the channel as a whole, but the setup is exactly the same. The only difference is we see a small cloud of dust puff up before the telly as some kind of vehicle drives by it. We don't see the vehicle, or much else, you get the picture. The colour palette is, once again, quite different from the rest, giving it somewhat of a more distinctive visual look, but beyond that, there really isn't that much on offer, or that much to delve into, which is a great shame. I think it's finally time to hone in on the point I've been mentioning throughout this episode, and that is that there are a few potential reasons to believe that these idents were created, or at least partially created, with the use of artificial intelligence, or AI for short. Now just to clarify, I have no direct confirmation that this is the case. I've seen some people draw comments online and give reasons as to why, and I'd say it's not entirely out of the question. With how good AI is getting now at rendering video ideas from scratch, to give it the prompts to make idents such as this would no longer be an impossibility. We also know that several aspects of the TV industry are gradually beginning to introduce forms of AI into different departments, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if some other TV channels are already using AI for their idents. For me, I think it could possibly be AI for a few reasons. The effects, namely of the snowball hitting the TV and the dust in the West ident, look very hokey. And aside from the uniformity of the setups, whilst the landscapes are provided, they don't necessarily feel very detailed. There are details there, for sure, in most of them, at least, but these are vast landscapes that are very sparsely populated. Once again, I have no direct confirmation that AI has been used, and it may not have been used at all. But for me, whilst the Rewind TV launch idents hold some promising motifs and ideas, they all just feel a little empty and hollow for them to really ascend the ranks of impactful sequences. This is very early days, of course, and there is plenty of time for Rewind to introduce new idents that aren't afraid to push the boat out a little bit more. But until they do, I'm afraid for me, dear viewer, these idents on the whole, while showing some promise, just don't quite cut the mustard. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of the Ident Review. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like the video, subscribe to us here at AMTV, and let me know your thoughts on the idents we've looked at in the comments down below. Until the next time, see you later. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Bruce Danton, Globe of Reviews, Derek Chambers, Shaun Knock, Dord Khan, Liam Demain, Trev Hughes, AJ Mac 200017, Deck KP20, Simon Harrison, Evan Hart 41, Jen, Ted Elliott, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, our AMTV staff members.